I'm Alex with Storyline Travel. In this video, we're going to talk about 5 differences between being on a river cruise or an ocean cruise. And it starts as soon as your cruise starts. Let's talk about embarkation, debarkation, and the processes when you get to each port. On an ocean cruise, one of the things that you'll notice is that when you start your embarkation process, you're going to go through a security line, probably a metal detector of some sort, and then you'll visit with a member of the crew to get your passport validated and get all checked in. You may even have a picture taken that will later be used by security when you get on and off the ship. Then you go into a waiting lobby and you wait until your group or your name is called before going up a long gangway, usually with 3 or 4 switchbacks, and then you're on board the ship. One thing to notice when you get on board the ship is that typically your stateroom is not going to be available until after 2 p.m. And so you'll spend time exploring the ship, visiting different restaurants. Maybe you go to the buffet to grab lunch, or if there is a dining room open, you go sit down and you're served your lunch. You have hours to explore the many decks of the ship, and there may be 14 to 20 decks of the ship that you can explore during this time. Once you get to a port, the process of getting off and on the ship typically means you have to scan that card we talked about earlier with a security member. They verify your picture, and then you get off the ship. Coming back, you go through a similar security process. Most likely you'll go through a metal detector, your items that you purchased while you were out on your port stop or your excursion goes through a x-ray machine, and then you're let back on board. Everything is controlled with the same key card that you use for getting in and out of your room or to any special areas if you've paid an upcharge for exclusive access. And finally, debarkation of an ocean cruise. You'll typically be assigned a time within a 30-minute window that you'll be disembarking. You'll have the option of taking your luggage with you or debarking at a bit later time where your luggage is taken off the ship for you, cleared customs for you, and you must pick it up and then walk off into a waiting vehicle. That's the process on an ocean cruise. So how is it different for a river cruise? Well, I was very surprised the first time I went to a river cruise, and our car dropped us off right at the edge of the river. There was a gangway that was, I don't know, maybe 20 feet long, and we just took our luggage. Well, actually, a crew member came out and met us, and we took our luggage right on board. The check-in process was in the lobby of the river cruise ship, in which the reception area, there were 2 or 3 crew members who looked at our passport, verified whether our room was ready or not, and as we turned around, our luggage was gone. It had already been taken to our room. This process was very different than the ocean cruise, as there were no metal detectors, there was no security to go through. We were verified right there in the reception area. If our room was not ready, we had the option to go either to the sky deck at the top or to go into a nice lounge where a few snacks were waiting for us to eat. When we got to a port, depending on the river cruise ship we were on, we either used our card that was the same to get access to our room to tap and leave, or we would exchange our card for a I'm off the ship card that was held by the river cruise, and then we would go off. It was a much different experience as you were the person responsible for letting the cruise line know that you were getting off the ship or tapping back on when you returned. What about debarkation? Well, debarkation was very interesting because it really depended on what you were doing when your river cruise came to an end. If you were flying home, you had a scheduled time that a bus would pick you up and take you to the airport. All of our luggage was in the reception area, and it was slotted by time we were leaving. If you were planning to stay in the location where your river cruise came to an end, you could grab your bags at any time you were ready to leave. Usually we would arrange for a car to pick us up around 10 or 11 in the morning. And when that car arrived, we would just grab our bags, tap out for one last time that we were leaving, and then we would go on the rest of our adventure as we explored the cities or the surrounding countryside. Sometimes our flights were very late and we had a whole day to basically wait for our transfers. The river cruise line allowed us to leave our luggage there in the lobby area. We could go off and explore the city. Even when other guests that were going to take the next river cruise came on board, we were still allowed to stay, and we even enjoyed a lunch buffet that was provided on that day. There was no pressure to be off the cruise like on an ocean cruise. By the way, most ocean cruises require you to be off their ships by 10 a.m. We actually, on one of our river cruises, stayed until 2 p.m. We enjoyed lunch on that river cruise, and then once our bus showed up, we grabbed our bags and off we went to the airport. So those are some big differences between embarkation and debarkation. Ocean cruises provide many options with stage shows, live musicians. There may be comedians on board, and sometimes during the day there will be trivias or lecture sessions. You might even learn how to cook an item. Ocean cruises provide daily itineraries received the night before of all the activities that will be happening on the next day. If you decide you don't want to go on an excursion or get off on a port, you can look to see what could fill your day there on the ship. While there may not be many things available, there will be some items for you, and you'll have different options for entertainment. For those of you who are new to river cruising, what's the entertainment like? Well, for a river cruise, a lot of the entertainment is being in the destination. Most of your river cruises will port in the heart of the city. You will have the opportunity to explore on your own, even when there's not a planned activity. If the cruise line does bring entertainment on board, it will typically be a live musician or possibly some lecture about the region or the city that you're visiting or will visit on the next day. That said, entertainment is very light on a river cruise ship. Some might say non-existent. So prepare yourself. The entertainment is in the world around you. It's off the ship. Entertainment on the ship is very limited. Dining is a great topic that most people get really energized about. And the differences between an ocean cruise and a river cruise are unbelievable. Let's start with that ocean cruise. With an ocean cruise, you may have multiple main dining rooms. And almost always at some point, there is a buffet available for you to grab breakfast, lunch, and in many cases, even dinner. You tend to have multiple specialty restaurants where you can have a steak at the steakhouse. Maybe there's a specialty restaurant focused on seafood. And it seems like every ocean cruise I'm on, there is an Italian specialty restaurant. There's typically a snack available for you either by the pool or in different parts of the ship where if you're hungry midday, you can go grab chicken fingers or a hamburger, maybe a hot dog. And almost always you'll find a slice of pizza on an ocean cruise ship. In some ships, 24 hours a day. For those who experience a river cruise for the first time, they find out that dining is very different. And one of the first things that you notice is there's typically only one dining room. The main dining room is built to hold all of the guests on board the ship. And so because of the smaller size of the ships and the fact that it can't hold all the guests, you tend to only have one main dining room. A few of the cruise lines out there have created a more relaxed dining experience on the back of their ship where you could go and grab lighter fare for dinner that maybe would only seat 20 to 30 people. Another big surprise that ocean cruisers find when they get on board a river cruise is that food's not available 24 hours a day. So there's a great difference in the dining experience. Another thing to note is that most of your river cruise lines do not have drink packages. While on an ocean cruise, you may have 3 to 4 different options for drink packages, everything from a soda package to a moderate alcohol package to a premium alcohol package. With river cruises, that's very different. You will tend to have wine and beer at lunch and dinner provided. Many of the river cruise lines now provide a happy hour where there will be cocktails available that you can have. And most of them do have a more gourmet coffee machine available throughout the day for a cappuccino or a latte. However, you will find that in the afternoon or maybe in the evening after dinner, you're listening to a live musician and you would like a drink, you're going to be charged a la carte. Some of that may be changing in the industry, but as we record this in 2024, that's the state. One of the first things you'll notice as you start looking at an ocean cruise is that there are 4 primary categories and many different options within that category. So you'll have an inside stateroom, you'll have an ocean view room, you'll have a balcony room, and you'll have suites. Within the inside cabins, you may have a standard inside cabin or an oversized or family inside cabin. For your ocean view, you might have a water level ocean view with those round portholes, or you may have a higher ocean view that has a fixed window but has a lot more space than those lower rooms. When you get to the balcony rooms, you could have everything from a standard balcony, an obstructed balcony, maybe you're looking at a lifeboat, or a sunset balcony where you're looking off the aft of the ship. And now some cruise lines have introduced infinite balcony rooms in which your room space expands to that balcony space, but half the window comes down so you still get to enjoy the fresh air of a balcony. And finally, the 4th category is the suite category, where you have everything from an entry-level suite that is like a oversized balcony. It's got a lot more room within the room. The bathroom's 2 to 3 times the size. You have this long, beautiful balcony all the way up to the owner suite or the penthouse suite, where you have multiple rooms, you have wraparound balconies, and in some of these cruise lines, you'll have a jacuzzi right outside. So you'll have a lot of options on an ocean cruise for your staterooms. And compared to a hotel, many of your staterooms are going to be smaller than that hotel room footprint. But you'll still have a stateroom big enough to handle 2 to 4 guests and plenty of room to walk around in. So let's compare that with our river cruise. With the river cruise lines, you typically only have 3 to 4 categories. There are a few cruise lines experimenting with a few different categories, but primarily you'll have 3 different categories of staterooms to look at. The first, the entry level, is a fixed window room, sometimes referred to as a swan view room. These tend to be on the lowest deck of the river cruise, in which the window is high above your head, similar to like a basement window, and you're looking right out at the water level, hence the nickname Swan View, as you can see a swan swim by you on the river. These are the smallest rooms, and in almost every case, these rooms will only handle 2 guests. In fact, in many cases, your solo guests will be in these rooms. So if you're traveling by yourself, this may be a good option for you, but understand it's going to be small. On deck 2 and 3, you'll tend to find the next category of staterooms, and these are going to be the ones with balconies. Now, different cruise lines play with the balconies in different ways. Some use French balconies, where they take the whole floor space of the room for the guest, and the windows move to the side to open up, and there's your balcony. In other cases, you do have an actual traditional balcony. While narrow, there is enough room for a chair and a table. The balcony staterooms are the most common that you'll find on these cruise ships, while the rooms are bigger than the entry level, they do tend to only cater to couples. So once again, they're going to be much smaller than the staterooms you would experience on an ocean cruise, and they're really geared towards either 1 or 2 passengers. The one good news about these staterooms is that the bathrooms do tend to be bigger and are a lot more comfortable as you're cruising up and down the river. And finally, most of your river cruises will have 2 to 4 in the suite category. There's not a lot of these available. They are a double wide room in most cases, meaning you could probably put 2 balcony rooms in what is a suite room. Suite rooms will have the biggest bathrooms. They tend to have walk-in closets, and most of them will have a sitting area with a little love seat and table for you to enjoy maybe a dining experience, afternoon tea, or just sitting and watching the world go by as you cruise down the river. But compared to an ocean cruise suite, these rooms are still much smaller. However, a few of the cruise lines have created their suite rooms to be available to 3 and 4 guests. So if you do have family traveling together and you want to stay in one room, a suite tends to be the room and the best option for you. But understand, with only 2 to 4 per ship, those are the first rooms to sell out, and they go pretty fast. One other note about the rooms that are very different on a river cruise as opposed to an ocean cruise. When river cruises dock and port, they will do what they call stack, and they will stack 2 to 3 of the river cruises next to each other on a port. So one of the things you may find is as you open your curtains in the morning, you're docked next to another river cruise, and those guests may be opening their windows and you are a mere 5 feet away from your neighbor. This is a very different experience for an ocean cruiser, where worst case is you look out your room and you see another ship across a port. You could literally shake hands with your neighbor on a river cruise when you're stacked. Ocean cruises have really introduced some unique categories over the last few years. Everything from a yacht class ship that may sail 700 to 1,000 people, all the way up to some of the biggest ships that have 6,000 to 8,000 passengers. A lot of these ships have different neighborhoods that you can go visit to disperse folks into different parts of the ship. And the crew to guest ratio tends to be a lot more guests per crew member. You may have a room steward taking care of dozens of passengers on a 7-day cruise. And you're going to have multiple dining times in the main dining room. There tends to be an early dining time, a late dining time, as well as a eat at your own dining time to handle all of the different passengers on board going through. So you're going to have a lot more people, a lot more activity on the ship. Like I said, you've got 14 to 20 decks. They're full of people. So you see on a ocean cruise, even on the smallest and most luxurious cruises, you're going to have in the multiple hundreds, if not thousands of people. The ships are bigger and they can handle that. And that's why there's so many more activities, so many more dining options, because you're taking such a large scale of guests and you're dispersing them to different places. On a river cruise, this is very different. On your river cruise lines, you will have some lines that have anywhere from 100 guests on board up to just under 200 as the max. You can imagine the biggest difference. If you take the one ship that is packed at 200, it is still 550 away from the smallest yacht class ship on an ocean cruise. So the number of people on board is vastly different. In fact, you'll find that you recognize passengers much more frequently, you engage in conversations a lot easier, and in some cases you build wonderful friendships that may or may not happen on a bigger ocean cruise. Also, because of that size, your crew to guest ratio will always be as close to 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 as possible. Some of that is just because the number of cruisers is small enough so that when you add in all of the different crew members and their responsibilities, it just tends to be a much better experience, at least as far as that ratio is concerned. Your stateroom attendant, they may only deal with a dozen people. So those are some of the differences on board the ship between an ocean cruise and a river cruise. Are you looking to take a cruise soon? We hope this helped. Or if you know someone who's getting ready to take a cruise, share this video with them. And at Storyline Travel, we believe every adventure is a story waiting to be told.